Yeah, we're live, 2:31 in the afternoon. How's everybody doing? Today, I want to talk about the video that I just posted. If you have not, please go check it out. It is the high RAM versus the low RAM, and that's fitment more than anything, although we have obviously a fairly significant change in runner length. And then also, and we'll talk about this a little bit. Sometimes the thing that we want, we can't have. One, usually it's price. That's what I find. But also simply because it doesn't fit. Like even if if you take a look at so we'll backtrack a little bit. If you've taken a look at the video, you see that once again, if you do a comparison with manifolds that have changes in runner length, the runner length is the single biggest thing that you could change in the manifold. I remember having a discussion with a guy and I said, look, I know that you think flow and you think that a straight shot to the valve and plenum and entry. I said, you think that all of these things are the important things. I said, but I'm telling you that if we had a competition and all I could adjust, when you give me a fixed manifold, like a high rim or whatever, and all I can adjust is runner length, and I'll let you adjust everything else, I will win in making power because the runner length changes things more than all of the other things do. So because more than one thing is changing when you change the runner length, you're changing the reflected wave, you're changing inertial ram, you're changing Helmholtz resonance, you're changing the three. Two of them are kind of major. One of them, in my opinion, is no longer on the major list. The Helmholtz resonance is not a major element. I haven't seen that change things significantly, except in very, very specific areas. But runner length, the reflected wave, and inertial ram both have a significant change in the power output of the motor. Other things, not like runner length does. So the runner length has a big effect on power. And we saw that in this test once again, like we have on every test that I run, where we run the fabricated sniperish style manifold compared to any of the factory LS1, 2, 6, Trailblazer SS, truck, fast, whatever, in any kind of longish runner manifold. We see that. So when you're thinking about intake manifolds, once again, we'll bring this up. Make sure that you're thinking about these in terms of RPM. The intake manifold is going to dictate the effective operating range of the motor. It's going to work with the other things to do that. And I covered that in the video that, hey, the reason this thing wants to run out at 7,700 or more, we could easily run this thing to 8,000. It would be on the slightly downside of the curve, but I think it would still be holding out fairly well. The reason that we're able to run it out there and that it makes power out there is because we have the other things that make it make power out there. The two biggest things that work together to do that, one of them is the intake manifold. So a short runner intake manifold is going to want to make power at a higher engine speed than a longer one. So you can juggle the names, the short and the long, but you adjust those based on what you want your RPM range to be, what you want your effective RPM range to be. It's also a good idea and almost mandatory that you have cam timing that also wants to work. So if you have an intake manifold that wants to make power out there at 7,500 or more, then you have to have cam timing that will also support that wants to be effective out there as well. The cylinder head doesn't really want to be effective at an RPM range. It just wants to, the cylinder head, in my opinion, has the airflow to support the power production that's required out at that engine speed. So, more head flow, more power, that's good. But I don't necessarily think that a higher flowing head, if you had a milder cam timing, it's not going to want to make power out there. It's dictated by the other things. But having all three of them allows you to make power and more power out there. And that's what this motor was. On this 5.3, we had all those things. We have short runner manifolds. We have enough. We're getting up near the end of available piston to valve clearance with cam timing. So we're kind of out in the duration area and RPM range where we are. And then we have really good head flow. In fact, we have head flow to support another 100 horsepower. So if we could figure out a way to work that out of that would be good. So it's a good combination, and this is a good test. I haven't seen the high RAM versus the low RAM. I've searched around, and I haven't seen that sort of test. This actually did having run lots and lots of things, this did kind of exactly what I expected. But you always want to, I always want to, and I'm sure you guys too, we always want to see the results. We want to see what the actual change of the curve is. I expected the high ram to make more power in this RPM range. What I wanted to see, what I was curious about was what is going to happen at both far ends of the curve. Because if we load this thing low enough, we'll get into an RPM range where the runner length isn't doing anything. So it might be that they make the same power. You might have a weird thing happening where some other reflected wave is coming on the low ram where it's not on the high ram yet, and you get a little bit of a bump in some RPM range. That can also happen down there. And those are the things that I live for. Like, not that, because it's not a universal thing that a long runner at every RPM would be better. We saw that in all of the range that we tested here, but what happens at 1500? Normally our reflected wave and runner length doesn't do anything there unless we were to make it really, really long, like ridiculously long. But that's not what's happening here. But the other thing that happens is when these things are effective, they're effective in waves. And so, and then they have reducing amplitude after the primary wave, which means that they're gaining less on the secondary and tertiary waves. But like I said, those waves happen even before the primary wave. So you got weird things happening below. So it's kind of cool stuff. So that's the stuff that I live for. And then also on the other end, what happens on the other end? I expected, or what I have come to expect is a shorter runner manifold would typically make more peak power. And there's going to be some kind of crossover at some RPM. It might be that we never get there in our test RPM, but at some point they should cross over. The short runner manifold should go, hey, look, I'm coming into my own. My reflected wave is working and I'm getting cylinder filling and it's helping. And I think what happened here is on the high ram, the short ram, particularly on the 5.3, I think we just, we got to our power peak before that thing was happening. And so maybe at 8,000, if we kept going and the longer runner high ram fell off more than the short runner did, we might see some sort of change there. It's going to happen at some RPM range. It just may not have happened in the RPM range where we were running this test at. And like I said, the reason that we did that is because we were already at the power peak. There's no reason wasn't a reason for me to go beyond that and then potentially put more stress on the junkyard 5.3, which I want to hold together and not break. Having no idea about its, what happened before I got it. We know that it was a high mileage junkyard motor, but I don't know how well it's been treated. I also don't know how many pulls. It's got at least 100 pulls now at 75 to 7,700 RPM. So it will keep doing that a lot, or at least up to here. But I don't know if does it have 3 pulls left? Does it have 30? Does it have 300? Does it have 3,000? I don't know. And then, but what I do know is that if we go from 7,500 to 8,000, it will have fewer pulls in it of its remaining life at 8,000 than it will at 7,500. And then even, unless at 7,500 than it will at 7,000. As you go up in engine speed until you hit whatever that critical RPM is and the thing just breaks because it won't rev that high. Every step toward that is diminishing the number of revs that you can do, diminishing the number of runs that you can make. So I don't know where that is. And that's why we keep running these and find out. It's kind of cool stuff. But we never reached the point, that crossover point, or we just reached the crossover point with the high ram versus the low ram because they're very short runners. So my question for you guys is, what do you guys think? Somebody requested, well, now you need to test the ultra low ram. And in my opinion, I don't need to test the ultra low ram. I will if they want to send me one, but I think we already know what's going to happen. I mean, the ultra low ram is going to be worse than the other two. I think if they change the runner length dramatically, I don't think that that's going to be beneficial. I think the design is interesting. The way that they got it to be even lower was to have this third piece basically, rather than just an upper or a lower and then an upper lid. They have an upper and a lower, and then then the throttle body mount joins those two together. So it's interesting. but it has really short runners. So in this RPM range, I don't think it's going to work. But so we saw, we saw more torque, obviously, with a longer runner thing. That's not terribly surprising. But what do you guys think? When I first started this discussion, my point was that let's say that we wanted to have an exhaust done for our twin turbo setup, and then we want, long tube headers. We want them all equal length. We want them, I don't know, step headers. We want a merge collector. We want all these things to try to optimize the power production. And that's all well and good, except that 99.9% of the people don't have room for that. You can't fit all of the things that you want in there. You can't fit both the turbos and all that exhaust and the wastegates and everything. You just can't fit that stuff in there. Same thing with these manifolds. And that's the thing. We may want a lot of different things, but sometimes we're restricted with what we can have. Going and buying a Trailblazer SS intake manifold, that manifold works really good. It makes good power. It doesn't make fast power, but it makes better than all the other factory intake manifolds. But what if you're trying to put that in a Camaro and it doesn't fit? Then you can't have that. Then you have to go with an LS6 or an LS2 or a Dorman or Fast or something else. And then so we can't have that. And then this is the case that we have here on this Holley high ram and low ram. And that's that, hey, after seeing this, hey, Richard did a test and the high ram makes more power everywhere. Okay, that's great. But I still have a Camaro. And I can't, or a Corvette, and I cannot fit a high ram under there. So your choice is something different than that. And then there's another consideration. So let's say you have these manifolds and then you're running it out at 7,500 RPM or more, and then you have boost on it. So I want to talk about a race situation here first. So let's say you have twin turbos, you have a centrifugal blower, whatever you have, and you're running boost on it. It might be that where the high ram is making more power, it's really irrelevant, because if you have a turbo at 4,500 RPM or 5,000 RPM, you have more power than you can deal with because you don't have the traction for that. So that becomes irrelevant. With a centrifugal, it's a little bit better because you have a rising boost curve. But when you can add with a turbo, when the missing 30 foot-pounds of torque is just less than a pound of boost, you have that at your disposal. It's very, very easy. And then also it fits in packages. So you're not down much, when you're adding boost to that, and you can make all the power that you want, and then you worry about putting it down anyway. So it's not really a loss for things like that. And then, like I said, the thing is that it looks cool. The low rise manifolds, like the low ram and stuff, and the BTR one that I'll do a test on also. But they fit. They look good and they fit. And then, like I said, yeah, I'm down a little bit. So what? I'm down 10, 20, 30 foot-pounds, whatever, at this RPM range. But now I have 1,000 foot-pounds because I have a twin turbo deal. I have way more than I can use. So that missing part is all but irrelevant. It doesn't really matter. So that's important. But the thing that I want to talk about is now, what do you guys think? And then I think this will be our poll. Okay, let's see here. Override notes. Okay, so the question is, will the low ram make less average power than the high ram if we were to run the Eaton M90 on it? So if we've run the Eaton M90 on the high ram, if we run that Eaton M90 now on the low ram, will it continue to do what we saw on this NA combination? We had a few people ask that in the thing too. Well, what happens? Does it even out if you put the blower on it? Like, no, it doesn't even out. I'm answering the question. Yeah, we had 100%. Now we don't. Boost novice, what's going on? Don't forget to like the video. Yeah, everyone like, share, subscribe, ring the bell, all that. high ram wins. Wish they had a high ram, like a metal LSXR manifold or adjustable high ram. When you next test a 462 valve, let me know and I'll ship you my trick flow street burner manifold and you can test it out. I'm trying to think if I have a trick flow. I know I have the trick flow. I saw the air intake assembly for that. But I don't know if I have the manifold. Tube runner length affects torque curve. Yep. Burnsy's here. Shadow Ops. Getaway. Bro, I've seen twin turbos plumbed into stack 871s in a Geo tractor. It will fit. That's a lot of packaging. I think I need to update my YouTube app. 92%. Yeah, it's easy to fit stuff with no hood. It's a lot easier to fit stuff on the engine dyno too. Although we have some constraints, especially on the new dyno. I haven't run anything on their new DTS. It's a power mark, I think, that Westech has. I haven't run anything on that dyno yet. I ran the Honda stuff. The guys at Skunk have a power mark over there, and that's what we run the K series on. But I've not run anything on the new one at Westech. But there are some constraints for that, like with exhaust, because of the way that things are around where the engine is. There's definitely some fitment issues. Not anything near like what there is in the vehicle, obviously. But sometimes things that are designed to fit in the vehicle because of how we have the mounts run and stuff. So sometimes they don't fit. And so we just have to make, you got to super Richie everything and make it fit. Ford 2.3 liter Duratec, should I turbo on mostly stock or port, high compression and cam? A turbo will gain you a lot more power than all that other stuff will. It's a lot easier to make power with even just a little bit of boost compared to porting heads and cams and compression stuff. Mobile Meat, what's up? Overbuilt, what's going on? So I got a couple comments about the bubbler test too, which I thought was interesting. I can't believe that they have that. So they get on the bubbler test. They have a double whammy actually. So it does have a big opening that allows boost to escape, and it also because I was wondering how they had that configured with no check valve on it, so that it would be a vacuum leak. But it's just rerouted back into the inlet of the throttle body. So what they're doing is ingesting, it's on the other side of the throttle body, on the non-leaking side of the throttle body. But what they're doing is they have a boost leak and they're compounding that with introducing oil vapor into the blower, which is a double whammy. So yeah, bubbler guys, if you have that, just get rid of it. Or put a petcock on it so that you can drain the oil if you need to drain the oil, and just drain it to atmosphere. Have it just aimed onto a bucket or something, and then start it up and get all that stuff out. But don't let oil vapor go back into your motor. That's bad. And don't have a 3/8 hole with a boost leak, which is going to be pretty significant. CJ, what's up? Yeah, that's good. Everybody we only got 50% of the likes here. Run ratio suggestions for a turbo 5.3, turbo 400 street strip car. How much, Edwin, I need to know how much power you're going to make, because I would base it more on what you think your mile an hour is going to be than what effective acceleration is going to be. Because if you have 1,000 horsepower 5.3 turbo, the gearing's not really going to matter. You're going to be fighting traction and braking other things. So just let me know how much power you're going to run, and then we can kind of pick a gearing for you. So interesting idea on those newer TVS blowers. How would one go about reintroducing blower surge? Well, you do blower surge with a tune, right? So I have a question for blower guys out there. Let me know in the comments. Let me know what you think. We see a lot of these old style blowers like the 144s and the 174s, 177s. The old Holley, B&M, YN kinds of things, and a lot of those are top fed. So most of these EFI blowers, like the M90 and the 112, and those are all fed from the back. Does feeding it from the back and having it go all the way through the rotor pack and then discharge near the front of the blower, is that better than having it draw in from the top and go to the bottom? Let me know what you guys think. I was using a reverse boost formula for my Turbo 4.3 Vortec, and I discovered I needed more boost. Yeah. But luckily, the nice thing, CJ, is that that's an easy cure, right? What did the dyno look like when you pulled the lid? Nothing. We were, the dyno didn't know that even happened, because when we pulled the lid, when we went to wide open throttle, I went to wide open throttle first so that there would be no vacuum on the lid. So I went to wide open throttle. Now there's no vacuum on the lid. We're at wide open throttle. So removing the lid did nothing. The thing was already loaded at wide open throttle, like the start of the dyno. And then if you saw, I signaled to Steve, who was in the console. I just asked him to be there for that one run. And then all he had to do was push start, and it started going. The concern isn't that part. That part's actually easy. The concern, and it's not even much of a concern, is at the end of the pull. So as it goes all the way up to 7,700 or whatever, then what happens is the dyno starts loading it down and stopping the motor. And then I told Steve, but he knows more about that dyno than I do. Just click off the ignition. Just click off all that stuff up at the top. And then you heard, if you listen, you hear a little backfire when we shut that off. That was our rev limiter kicking in. So we just shut it off. But the problem is that the reason that I made, or the mistake that I made, was I hadn't turned the electric water pump on for a long time. And so the motor was really hot. Well, it was a lot hotter than what we normally do when we test it. So it wasn't a back-to-back test versus the other runs made with the lid in place. So I'm going to redo that, either with the high ram or the low ram, or one of them, and see. There's never been a time when I've done that where it didn't make more power like that. Even though we're not seeing a bunch of vacuum present in the plenum, because at this power level, the 105 millimeter throttle body that we have on the high ram or on the low ram, they both use the same lid in the both 105 millimeter throttle body. It's not really a restriction. So we're not seeing a lot of vacuum there anyway. So it's not a flow thing, but we're changing this thing from being a common plenum manifold to being effectively an IR manifold. And not totally an IR manifold, because we do have walls around all on one side of all of the runners. So we have a hybrid one, but it usually makes more power. 800 to 1,000, 275 tire. Yeah, he's going to need some gearing for that. And what RPM are you going to run? I'm sure somebody's asking what RPM you're going to run on the motor, because that's going to make a difference too. 275 on 15 by 12. Center fed would be the best, but I don't think there would be a big difference between a front or rear fed. Not a front one. I'm wondering about a top feed versus a back feed on it, because on a top feed, you're essentially not using all of the rotor pack, depending on how the entry tapers into the rotor pack. But because like on a dual carb, like 671 kind of thing, you're getting, I think, more distribution across the whole rotor pack. I don't know. I don't know if that's actually a thing. A couple of turbo ice drift mowers. That sounds awesome. I'm in already. Wondering if the AMR 300, 500 can be mounted vertically instead of normally horizontally. I don't know about the oiling if you do that. How did the distribution look with the lid off? I don't know. We didn't have 802s on it. Can you smash down the high ram for packaging? Yeah, it's the low ram. And JK, I looked at doing that on the low ram, but there's just not a lot of room for that. Shadow Ops. You can't go get a junkyard one? Junkyard for the win. Look how well this L33 is running. I know, Burns, right? Ice drift mower. It's like that's like a whole bunch of good things all in one sentence. All kinds of goodness there. Chock full of ice drifty mowery goodness. I like the guys that race mowers. With the blower top versus rear, didn't traditional top feed tend to favor the front of the blower for discharge? Well, not if you look at a 671 or an 871, it just goes from top to bottom. Admiral, that's good information. Speaking of fuel distribution, did y'all see that the Bosch recently came out with a pre-turbo rated Inconel core wideband sensor? That's pretty cool. So then it will withstand the heat of being before the turbo, which can get fairly high. They say it's accurate to 2.5 bar. Nice. And so then it should last forever after the turbo if you run it there. Assuming I don't know how susceptible it is to leaded fuel stuff. How's our poll doing? 73% are saying yes. With the low ram, make less average power than the high ram if we run the Eaton M90 on it. So who are the guys that are saying no to that? Just people that want to be difficult? Mobiles, off topic. Have you tested the twin ram air versus the normal OTRs over the road? Is that what that is? Cold air single, and what works best? There's not a best there. One inlet versus two inlets. It would be the amount of flow that the two sizes have. So if you can get a 3.5 or 4-inch single inlet or whatever size that is, depending on what the flow rate and the power output of the motor is, anything that's restrictive is going to be bad. So if you have two smalls and it's restrictive, that's bad. If you have one small or medium that's restrictive, that's bad. If you have one big or two mediums or two bigs and neither one of those are restrictive, then they'll both work. The best thing is cold air and then getting that cold air, without any sort of restriction. The AMR 500 would be on a 1000cc 6-valve V-twin mower engine, which is vertical shaft. Able to use the mower deck PTO as an on and off for the blower. Okay. Yeah, I don't know that it will stand. I'd have to look in there to see how the oiling's done, but I don't think so. I have some vague memory of some racers talking about the angle of the blower lobes pushing air in a direction, but this might be specific to something. Well, if you look at a rotor, the way that a rotor works, it definitely is pushing it in a direction. So, especially twisted lobes are doing that. The old 2-lobe rotors were straight, and so they didn't do that. Wideband sensors don't care about heat. They operate at 1,000 Fahrenheit on NA motors. Have an AMR blower to bolt onto a T20 Ferguson tractor. Well, Admiral, if they don't care about heat, why are they making it out of Inconel? Have you tried a motor adjusted trombone style individual intake? You mean one that has sliders on it, like the 787 rotary did from Mazda? I've always wanted to make one like that. I just do the manually adjustable. I haven't done a slider with an attachment that does that while it's running. Problem is the current gen 4.2 and 4.9 sensors will fail internally with back pressure. The current gen sensors can't deal with more than 1.3 bar absolute or 0.3 bar of back pressure. So if somebody has a restrictive exhaust on their turbo, it's going to be problematic with an old sensor. JK, the old Formula One used to be like that too. Sticks. I picked up my motor yesterday and the machine shop destroyed my cam bearings. How did they destroy them? Did they scuff them while they're putting them in? Did they skirt past them when they were dragging the tool out or something? The scratches all down the cylinders. That's not good. Clevite says my bearings won't be available until June. That's like forever. What are we going to do if we can't get our parts? Yeah, Mobile Meat, happy to help him. Lots flow, lots cold. That's a win-win. So I obviously need to have a more of a discussion with the 34% in our poll. Because runner length doesn't matter once you add boost, right? It still does. Huge deep scratches on every bearing. I wonder what they did. I wonder if the bearings, when the bearings were off, if they were banging around together or something. The options for the poll are yes and no. And the question is, will the short runner manifold that makes less power, NA, will it make more power under boost, essentially? I mean, will it make less power under boost? They were fresh in the box. So BSO, you got to step in with the rover question. So when you run your motor at 7.5 pounds of boost at 1,500 RPM, I want to see a video of that. I want to see a video of it making that boost at 1,500 RPM. Boost is that multiplies what you have. So add me into whichever side that fits. Okay. Detonation City. Oh, for the boost at 1,500 RPM. How do you draw through for the turbo Briggs V-twin motors? I saw that you're talking about adding intercooler and fuel optimization. I would think fuel would pool the bottom of the intercooler. That's what my feeling is, and it has been on any sort of, whether it's a draw through turbo like with a carburetor or even fuel injection mounted in front, like on the inlet side of the turbo, or the other. This came about from people suggesting that I need to run water meth injection in front of the turbo, which is a good idea and helps make the turbo more zippy. But I don't see how, even with the extra atomization that might happen going through the impeller, how does it not go hitting the flat wall with small slits in it that is an air-to-water intercooler or an air-to-air intercooler or any kind of intercooler? How does it not see that? And then the temperature change also, and how does it not, turn back into liquid? They didn't even bore a hone all the way down the cylinder. So I'm kind of, yeah, you say you're not happy. I get it. The pre-turbo version is accurate to 2.5 bar and will survive well above that. Okay. The RPM boost, avoid detonation via water, alcohol injection, and timing retard via detonation sensor. That'll be cool. That'll be awesome. Stormy Young, to fix poll, close chat, and come back in. My Scania intercoolers had small drains to let blow-by sludge out. But they weren't frosty skips, but they weren't 3/8 holes like the bubblers are. CJ, you're running a 26 horsepower. You're running the 1.4 turbo from the Cruise on a 26 horsepower Briggs. That should make some boost then. Running any sort of liquid through the turbo is asking for blade erosion. Shadow Ops. Yeah, if I was retired and had a garage to tear down in a day so it could be mag particle eddy current. You would tear down a junkyard motor to get it magged? Seems pretty aggressive. Mobile meat service, I'd say the low would make more. So you'd say the low RAM that's making less NA is going to somehow make more under boost? We ran 10 PSI on a twin turbo M70 BMW with stock 9.5 to 1, maybe 5 PSI at 1200, and it didn't blow up. Cool. Click on it, dismiss it, then close the chat and come back in. Come back in strong, though, right? You got to come in strong. To answer the poll question, you might be able to find the answer by testing an Eagle Hemi with a truck manifold. Well, why would we need to do that? Wonder if you've seen low RPM boost situations that ended in a, what's an RUD? Flopper valve short runners versus long runners. Polls just a black screen. How about if I do this? Can you see it now? Can you see me now? Can you see me now? Rapid unscheduled disassembly. We have broken stuff. I broke the Cadillac. I think the 440 may have been injured, but usually that stuff can just be traced to operator error, a lack of tune, too much timing. What kind of turbo for my 2.3 on the cheap? What 2.3 do you have? What motor is it? And what motor is it? Or how much power is it making NA? Ross Gibbs Farm HX35. The KO3 SRT4 turbo had the wastegate welded shut on the 26 horsepower V-twin that made 6 psi. Why did it only make 6 psi? Did it not have enough exhaust to spin that turbo up? Oh, a Duratec. You can buy lots of cheap new turbos online. So depending on the power output you want, maybe even something smaller, like a GT30 maybe, or even one of the old T28 disco potato kind of things for that. I haven't been able to see the survey for a few weeks ever since old YouTube did an update. Frosty Skips Farm, probably exhaust side's a bit too large. Oh, on the mower engine. I've had that happen. We've put turbos on before. I remember doing the Honda stuff. We stepped up to a turbo that the guys from Turbo City gave us, and we had, which I think for theirs was a Grand National turbo. We were trying to run it on the B16 because we would run the T3s from the like SVO Mustangs and T-Birds and stuff. We'd run those with a bunch of different ARs, with 3 different ARs that were available. And then I'm like, well, we're at the limit of that turbo. It just won't make any more power. Let's put something bigger on it. And so they gave us a T3 T04, but it didn't want to do what those little T3s did. It didn't really spool up. Do you have a GoFundMe for financing some of your projects? No, but I'm thinking about doing something like that. So I have a Chevy Sprint Turbo that I have my eye on that I'd like to get, but there's no way I could afford it right now. BS, how much power is that motor going to make? All of my stuff is based on power output. 14 or 15 G from a DSM. DSM, the sound machine. That's right. So, and sometimes, let's see who asked that. Matt. Sometimes I announce that on these live feeds, and I've had lots of help from people on the live feeds to get the K24 that we ran a bunch of testing on. Well, 112 millimeter throttle body increase power on an LT4. Is this a supercharged LT4? If that's the case, then probably yes, as long as the other things that are after the 112 millimeter, I don't know how big the opening is on the manifold portion of that. But if all of that is smaller than the 112, then no. But if it's all as big as the 112, then yes. Can you still buy a disco potato? No, but you can buy turbos that would be like that from the various offshore guys. Would disco potato work for a K24A4 if I'm trying to run 250 wheel horsepower? I can't really get cans, but you can turbo them for cheap. There's lots of good turbos for a K24. I don't think I would pick that one. I don't think I would pick that's a T28, I think. My 4.3 liter turbo Vortec might make 7 psi at 1500, but the turbo is a small T3 flange, unknown size. It's one turbo from an old small block Chevy twin turbo kit from 12 years ago. I only see one kit made for my 03 Focus. They make you sign an EPA paperwork. Yeah, I would imagine. GT28 RS. Yeah. Frosty, you want to put two 2864s on your 4-liter Ranger? Rolling in your 4.0 with your rag top down so your hair can blow. Our poll 70%. Wow, that should be 1,000,000% yes. 1,000,000 times yes. 1 million. This is what I think of bills and stuff. Burn! Happy holidays to you too. Have you ever tested Ford M6500R-302H to see how high they rev? I don't know what that is. You got to tell me what the part number is. Probably the answer is no if I don't even know what that is. I accidentally hit no because I couldn't see what I was looking at until I answered. What are the smallest turbos you think I can get away with on a 4.6 Rover to make a low-speed boost response? Well, you could put 2 of these Sprint turbos on there and make boost on the starter motor. But there are lots of small turbos that you would make immediate boost on. Richard, do you reuse factory LS, MLS head gaskets and torque to yield bolts during your testing? Yeah, I do often. On NA stuff, definitely on the bolts, I reuse the factory head bolts. If I don't have ARP stuff, I normally put ARP stuff in if I'm doing boost. I will reuse head gaskets over and over and over again, especially when I'm doing head swaps. But I don't normally reuse a factory head gasket that has been on the vehicle, like on this 5.3, something that's real high mileage. When you take the heads off and take the head gasket is typically going to be stuck on one side or the other. It's going to be stuck to the head or it's going to be stuck to the block. And when you pull it off, it leaves a lot of parts of the head gasket in place on stuff, which is why we have to do the razor blade rebuild. So I don't reuse the factory head gaskets very often, the original ones. When we put head gaskets on it, if I do head swaps, like when we tested 20 sets of heads, we just use the same set of head gaskets. You know, it's been messing up from hacking and the solar flares. Yeah, turbo off the starter motor. No, that's the lowest RPM that you could get. That's not 1,500. It's not 1,000. It's not idle. It's not before idle. It's during the startup that it's making boost. Have you worked with or seen the Darton MID sleeve configuration? Yeah, I've run those before on LS motors. The 468 that I did was a Darton sleeved LS6 block, I think. Larry, that's a good point, and that's the point that I made in the video. The low ram wins for me because the high ram wouldn't fit under the hood, and that's one of the choices that people have to make. The MLS sensor makes sense. Testing so often to get a benchmark versus long driving. Yeah, we're not gonna, like on an NA motor, you're not gonna hurt a head gasket. There's almost nothing that we could do to hurt a head gasket. I mean, if we could tune ourselves out of it right into detonation, I guess, and maybe hurt a head gasket. But otherwise, you're never going to have enough cylinder pressure to like overcome any sort of factory head gasket. That's not an issue. I just don't like reusing the ones that are all ratty and beat up, and with all of the sealing surface, all of that stuff being gone. Some guys just spray copper coat on it, and we have done it before where we cleaned everything off. We sprayed them all with copper coat, put it back on, only because the sealing area, the combustion sealing rings, were all in basically good shape. So we knew that that would seal. And honestly, if it leaked a little bit of water and it doesn't go into the combustion sealing, and hopefully it doesn't go into the oil, that if it came out the end of the, outside the block, I'd be okay with that. But we didn't even really have that problem. And again, for what we're doing on the dyno, it's not a longevity thing. They're Ford high performance roller lifters. Yeah, I don't have any idea. I've never done and I don't ever remember doing a high RPM thing other than that 8,000 RPM hydraulic roller thing that we did. And I think that we used short travel comp stuff. Would a 525, 215, 218, 109 be a good tow cam for an Eagle Hemi? Yeah, the LSAs, it's going to have a little bit of an idle chop to it, but it'll make good low speed power. I heard the Darton's guy doesn't do LSs with the MID anymore because the deck is too weak on the factory blocks there. Previously, did a 14 horsepower Kohler Command single cylinder turbo with a welded wastegate, which only made 3 psi. The turbo valves would float. No turbo and valves would not float. Wow. So you ran into the spring pressure problem under boost. It's sad that you could only make that amount of boost, right? Can you just not find a turbo small enough for those motors? And did you try nitrous? Have you seen the barbell plug kits for the oil? The billet ones, are those the ones that you're talking about? I mean, they look fancy if that's what you're talking about. But the composite ones, like the factory ones, since they last 300 and more thousand miles, I'm okay with those. Shadow Ops, I agree. I'm the kind of guy that wants to go through an engine with an overall process. Yep. You just really need a short block is all. Yeah, I would not think twice about, if I had something that I needed to have run, I would not think twice about going and to the wrecking yard, getting a short block and putting it in there and making it run. Have you seen any block or head damage on aluminum block or heads from a stainless ring head gasket? I haven't. It's a barbell delete kit. I haven't seen that. The Ability Good dumbbell have a thinner shaft. That's why I used one. Why do you the thinner shaft? Are you thinking that more oil flows or something? Sorry, I'm late to the show. Didn't see the video yet, but what principles do you see at play between the two rams? One of them has a different runner length than the other. Eric, we'll see you later, man. Close our poll at 62%, and the 38% are people that don't listen to what Richard's saying on all his videos, or they're just obstinate. That was my thinking. Less blockage in the oil flow. Okay. Did you knife edge them too, so that they had the right kind of flow and put it in line with the direction of the flow? I'm having issues with finding a replacement TCM. Is that a transmission control module? Do you have any good parts interchange so I can find a replacement TCM part number for this car? I don't. I never use that because I don't get into that. All my wrecking yard stuff is just an engine, and we throw most of the other stuff away, and never a transmission or the harnesses. On a small block Ford, how much do you worry about the quench being 38 to 42? What I do when I'm putting the motors together is I try to make sure that the I try to make sure the piston is at 0 deck. And then I try to make sure that it has enough piston to head clearance, which is more than 30 thousandths. And then after that, I don't worry about that, your quench number. Scott, I know. Yeah, no, I was joking. Chrysler's been a nightmare trying to find a trans cooler. Make sure your drain tube for the turbo is big enough. That often gets overlooked. Good advice from Overbuilt. I'm guessing the delete kit is a friction fit freeze plug. Why would anybody delete the plug? I don't understand. What is the barbell doing that people don't want it to do? I have an idea. Flat quench pad versus angled. Are you talking about softening the chamber? Because that works. Taller runner equals larger mass equals larger momentum, regardless of boost. For example, regardless how big the arm, bigger hammer hits with more momentum than a smaller hammer. That's not what's going on here. It's not a mass thing. What's the secret to getting a cam 232 Terminator X to idle? How much fuel is needed? I am struggling. I don't know. I wish James was here. He's done a lot of. Are you doing this on a Holly? If it's a factory ECU, then I won't have any idea on how to make that happen. I found out it's cheaper to make a Model T kit car than it would be to restore my Dakota and use the. They say it restricted the oil flow. Yeah, I'm not buying it.
Mom wants to go to the.
Is she here?
I don't know if she's getting dropped off here or if we're meeting her there, but she wants to go.
Okay, I'll find out. Let's see. Mandark, is that your thing? So now that you've made your second comment, now it's not getting answered. Because if you ask a question and it doesn't get answered, it's not because there's any sort of deception or anything going on. But now when you come back with attitude, no. Let's see. We're going to get our tree. We don't even have our tree yet, so I got to go get my Christmas tree. As soon as I turbo my 4.3 Vortec at 170,000 miles, head gaskets went out. Then I swapped MLS head gaskets with new torque to yield bolts, and she loves it. Did you resurface the head and the deck when you did that? Yeah, Scott, I agree. I mean, and I've said this many times. I like the ability goodness stuff. I'm a sucker for it. There's a reason that everybody wants to have that. It's not necessary, but it is good to have. Oh, cool. Thanks. Okay, cool. Okay. So maybe an intake charge resonance and the intake going on, the valves opening and closing, maybe a difference between the two might come into play. Similar to two-stroke power supply. Benz, yours will be the last comment for today. What's going on with the high ram and the low ram is just runner length. Because the plenum volume is probably very, very similar. They have the same lid on them. They have about the same depth. I mean, I didn't measure it and volumize it. But the big change is that one of them has much longer runners than the other. And it's doing exactly what runner length does when you compare them between the two. So the big thing between the high ram and the low ram is that you have a big change in runner length, and it affects the torque curve. And on that note, it is time to go, but I'm hoping I'll see you guys all tonight. If not, please go check out the video that I did on the high ram versus the low ram.